So let's now apply this to our example. We had 4 assumptions, 4 reasons for being too busy. And let's take them one by one and formulate and construct the extreme opposite. Now, the first assumption was, I do too many different things. And the simple opposite, the simple grammatical opposite of that is, I don't do too many different things. Okay, I don't do too many different things. Let's write it down. Now, we could also play on the word different, the opposite of the word different. So, I do many of the same things. Now, how could we make I do many of the same things more extreme? So if we do many of the same things, perhaps we just do one thing. I just do one thing. And here again, if I just do one thing, that's a pretty extreme opposite of the I do too many different things. But it's still not funny. How could we make it laughable or ridiculous? A little bit like the Don Corleone in our example of the elderly man who was afraid to go out at night. What is a kind of image of somebody who just does one thing? And for example, we could think of a one-trick pony, somebody who just is good at one thing. And usually that's a negative, but maybe we could be proud of being a one-trick pony. This is the kind of thing that I do. This is what I'm good at. This is kind of my thing. So we go from I do too many different things to I'm a one-trick pony. So the second assumption is I can't say no to requests. And that is something that a lot of us are facing. So the grammatical opposite would be I can say no to requests. And we could also change the semantic word no into its opposite. So yes. So then it becomes I can't say yes to requests. Okay? Keep the can't in there because you don't want to actually change the negative twice. So I can't say no to requests becomes I can't say yes to requests. And if you can't say yes to requests, then perhaps to make it more extreme, you never say yes to requests. Yes is really just not part of your vocabulary. And an extreme way to formulate then would be, whatever the request, the answer is no. Whatever the question, the answer is no. Before you even ask the question, while you're formulating the question, I can already tell you that the answer is no. And that's an extreme opposite from I can't say no to requests to I always say no to requests. Whatever the request, the answer is no. The third assumption was everything needs to be perfect. Many of us are perfectionists. Now the grammatical opposite is everything does not need to be perfect. And let's make that stronger. Everything does not need to be perfect. Nothing needs to be perfect. And if nothing needs to be perfect, then everything needs to be imperfect. Now, this imperfect, if we wanted to make everything imperfect, then we could just make everything just good enough, just squeezing by. And so the weird assumption behind thinking that everything needs to be perfect is that everything needs to be a 10 out of 10. But what if the thing that you're doing is just a pass-fail? What if it doesn't matter if it's done well? The only thing that matters if it is done at all. So it's only a pass or a fail. You only need a 6 out of 10 to get it done. And yet you're going to focus on getting a 7 or an 8 or a 9 or preferably a 10 out of 10. You're going to waste a huge amount of time because you're trying to do it perfectly when it doesn't need to be done perfectly. All that needs to happen is that it gets done at all. And so the opposite extreme would be that everything needs to be good enough. And then you could just ask yourself every time, what can I get away with? What is the minimum that I can get away with? And the antidote to this perfectionism, the antidote to everything needs to be perfect is, what can I get away with? So the fourth and final assumption is, no one else can do my job. Now, many of us think that too. So the opposite would be, everyone else can do my job. And let's make that a little bit more extreme. Everyone else can do my job better than I can. In fact, they're much, much better at it. So if everyone else can do my job better than I can, another way to say that would be to say that it's better if I don't do my job at all. And if it's better that I don't do my job, then perhaps I should just delegate everything. Now again, I should delegate everything is the antidote to no one else can do my job. And many of us do too many things. We micromanage other people's stuff. We do everything instead of delegating it to the people who could do it just as well. And in fact, the assumption behind there often is that I can do it better than they can. So even here, you could ask yourself, instead of me thinking I can do it better than they can do it a lot better than I can. Everybody else can do my job better than I can. So I need to delegate everything. So in step 3, we construct the extreme opposites, and we do it in stages. So first, we look at the grammatical opposite by putting no or not in the sentence. Then we've looked at the different words in the assumptions, and we've taken the opposite of the word. When it was no, we turned it into yes. When it was perfect, we turned it into imperfect. And so even if the opposite of the word doesn't exist, you can construct it. You can invent a new word, because a new word will be a new frame. People haven't thought about this because they haven't actually made a word for it. And then we've also tried to make it extreme. We've tried to make it ridiculous. So we didn't say that it has to be imperfect some of the time. We said it has to be imperfect all the time. We've made it stronger. We've made it more extreme. We don't just do one thing, but we're a one-trick pony. We've tried to find a ridiculous example of a ridiculous way of somebody who just focuses on one thing. We've taken something that sometimes is seen as negative, a one-trick pony, and turned it into something positive. So really, we're forcing ourselves to get out of our way of thinking. We're forcing ourselves to think of eco-warriors who are saving the environment by taking a lot of flights. We're trying to come up with something that is really quite ridiculous. I say no to everything. I delegate everything, etc. So the important thing is not to worry whether the things that you're writing down are true, because then all the emotional resistance will come up. And also, make your steps visible. Do it step by step. Take the opposites. Take all the words and turn them into opposites. Find different ways of making it extremes. So there's a problem in this part of the exercise which I call the intelligent people problem. And intelligent people think, this is my current frame. I can do all the steps in my head, and then this is the radical extreme. And because they're intelligent, sometimes these radical extremes are actually quite interesting. But the problem is that if they can formulate it in one go, then they already have it in their head. So they've come up with a cute exercise, but they haven't gone somewhere where they didn't know where it was. They haven't gone somewhere new. And so when I do the reframe, I always force myself to really follow the steps one by one, to just think of all the opposites, to think of all the opposites of the words, to think of all the complete extremes ones, until I find something that is so ridiculous that I have to laugh. If you're laughing, if you're chuckling, if you think this is the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard, you're on the right track.